For years, the South China Sea has been boiling with tension, but in recent months, China raised the heat using military-grade lasers, water cannons, and even ramming Filipino boats in open water. It wasn't just politics anymore, it was personal. Filipino fishermen just trying to feed their families found themselves chased, blinded, and cornered in their own waters, and for a long time, they felt alone. No navy, no backup, just silence. But in 2023, something changed. Manila launched a bold move, a transparency campaign. They began recording and releasing real-time video footage of China's aggression. The images were raw, unedited, unforgettable. Suddenly, the world could see what was happening, and it wasn't pretty. Picture this, your family out at sea, being harassed by foreign ships while no one steps in. Now, imagine turning the cameras on and the world finally paying attention. But this wasn't just for headlines. The Philippines was playing a strategic game, and it worked. The footage didn't just go viral, it spread through Tokyo, Canberra, and even New Delhi. China thought it could push as usual, but this time, the Philippines didn't retreat. Instead, it became the front line of something much bigger, and nations were watching closely, ready to respond. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. So who stepped in first, and why were they so fast to act? After years of scaled-back presence, the United States is back in the Philippines, and this time, it's all in. Thanks to the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, the US has reactivated access to Cold War-era military bases once thought forgotten. For many Filipino veterans, it was emotional. They watched American jets land on the same airstrips they once stood guard over decades ago. And the past had returned, but with a new mission. Today, the US has secured access to 9 key bases spread across the Philippines. These aren't just any bases, they are launch pads for fast action across the Indo-Pacific, ready for whatever comes next. Imagine these bases not as runways, but as regional nerve centers, capable of deploying missiles, troops, or jets within hours. And the US isn't just dropping by. American soldiers are now training shoulder to shoulder with Filipino forces, building trust and combat readiness. Every week, new military equipment rolls in. HIMARS rocket systems, F-35S, and even Patriot missiles. To China, it looks like provocation, but to the US and the Philippines, it's about prevention and preparation. In fact, Balikatan 2025, the joint US-Philippines exercise, saw over 16,000 troops participate, the largest in history. This isn't symbolic, it's strategic positioning. But the US isn't the only power stepping up. What about Asia's sleeping giant, Japan? For decades, Japan stayed cautious. Its military rarely stepped beyond its borders. But in 2024, that quiet policy changed forever. In a move that stunned the region, Japan signed its first ever mutual defense pact with a Southeast Asian nation, the Philippines. It was more than just a signature. For the first time since World War II, Japanese troops are now training and operating on Philippine soil. Two island nations once devastated by war, now standing together to stop another. But this partnership goes beyond drills. Japan's self-defense force is actively helping upgrade Philippine airfields and naval stations, making them tougher, faster, and ready for joint missions. And it's not just happening on land. Japanese warships are now showing up in contested waters, areas that China aggressively claims as its own. This has raised a serious question across the region. If China attacks, will Japan fight? That question alone changes the strategic map. To make it even clearer, Japan's powerful F-35 fighter jets are now taking part in joint drills with Philippine forces. That's a major leap from their past role as quiet observers. Japan isn't watching anymore, it's stepping forward with force, with alliances, and with purpose. But Japan's not the only one. If Japan's in, who's next to join this growing coalition? While tensions rose in the South China Sea, Australia was already getting ready. It started with hardened military bases, new radar stations, and a steady flow of troop deployments across the Indo-Pacific. But it didn't stop there. Today, Australian engineers are working side by side with Philippine soldiers, even in remote provinces. They're helping to build up defenses, fortify runways, and prepare for the unthinkable. In 2024, Australia signed a major reciprocal access agreement with the Philippines. This deal allows full troop rotations. Aussie forces can come, go, and operate as if they were local. This isn't a friendly visit anymore. This is a military partnership. And here's the twist. New Zealand, often quiet on global defense, signed its own deal, quietly placing troops nearby. No headlines, no speeches, just quiet, serious positioning. If conflict starts, both nations are expected to stand with the Philippines. They've trained for it, they've planned for it, and in many ways, they've already committed. Now, China isn't just facing one opponent, it's staring down a coordinated Pacific defense from Australia, New Zealand, Japan, the US, and the Philippines. And it gets even more intense when you realize some Aussie units are specially trained for island warfare, exactly the kind of terrain this conflict would involve. But here's the real surprise. What about the countries beyond the Pacific? Is Europe joining in too? In a shift no one expected 5 years ago, Europe is now sailing straight into the South China Sea. And it's not for a visit. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have begun regular joint naval drills with the Philippine Navy, turning quiet cooperation into strategic alignment. And on the ground, it's personal. European sailors now walk through Philippine coastal towns, greeted not as outsiders, but as allies. But this isn't just about showing flags. These are combat-ready destroyers, frigates, and even aircraft carriers ready for real conflict. If it comes to that, picture the scene. Warships from 3 continents docked side by side in Manila Bay, loaded, fueled, and prepared. It's no longer just a local standoff, it's a global signal. Even Canada has quietly entered talks to share intelligence, deploy assets, and even rotate troops through future joint bases. These moves might look calm on the surface, but make no mistake, they are calculated, coordinated, and critical. China calls it what it sees, a Western encirclement. And with each new arrival, that circle gets tighter. In a surprising twist, France has also offered advanced drone surveillance technology designed specifically for island chains like the Philippines, giving real-time eyes in places China once moved unseen. But while Europe's presence is growing, the biggest shock didn't come from the West. It came from the Indian Ocean. In early 2025, under its bold Act East policy, India made a move that shocked even its closest watchers. Once cautious, once quiet, India is now patrolling the West Philippine Sea side by side with Philippine Navy ships. This isn't just symbolic, it's strategic. India has deployed its powerful BrahMos missile systems to Luzon, the northern tip of the Philippines. These missiles are now within striking range of China itself. To put that in perspective, imagine a distant cousin showing up at your front door, not just to visit, but to stand guard, fully armed and ready. But India didn't stop at hardware. They've offered their navies joint command systems, making sure their warships and the Philippines can communicate, coordinate, and strike together as one force. For China, this crosses a line. What once looked like a local challenge has now turned into a global pushback. From the Himalayas to the Pacific waters, the message is clear. China isn't just being watched, it's being surrounded. And here's something wild. India's BrahMos missile is the fastest supersonic cruise missile on Earth. It's hard to track, harder to stop, and now it's aimed at key regions China wants to control. But what started as quiet support is now a loud signal. But how did this massive global response come together so fast? What's the hidden advantage? The secret no one saw coming that made it all possible? Here's the truth. Firepower isn't the only thing that wins wars. Sometimes the real weapons are paper, signatures, and systems. Over the last 2 years, the Philippines has signed over a dozen military agreements with nations across Asia, the Pacific, Europe, and North America. We're talking visiting forces agreements, mutual defense treaties, logistics, access deals, and shared command protocol. Sounds boring? Maybe, but that boring paperwork is why a Japanese jet can refuel at a Philippine airbase, why a US ship can reload missiles in Subic Bay, and why Indian forces can share battlefield radar data in real time. Without these deals, none of this coalition works. Imagine a global team showing up for a game, but everyone speaks a different language, has different rules, and can't even agree on the playbook. Now flip that. Today, the Philippines has synchronized protocols, shared communications grids, real-time satellite access, and even joint logistics networks with its allies. This means if a crisis starts, no one has to wait for permission. They're already inside the system. Every warship, every jet, and every drone can act immediately as one force. That's the real secret. Legal warfare isn't about lawsuits. It's about setting the rules of engagement before the first shot is fired, and logistics integration. It means you don't just have allies. You have a plug-and-play war machine spread across dozens of nations, all operating from Philippine territory. Even China, with all its missiles, can't shoot down a treaty. That's why some analysts now call the Philippines Asia's NATO base, without needing NATO. It's not a single military base. It's a multinational hub built on relationships, documents, and systems that China can't bomb away. And this, more than any missile, jet, or warship, is what makes the coalition unstoppable. But this leads to the final question: what happens next? What's the last piece of this puzzle, and how will it reshape the region forever? This is not a drill, not a theory, not a distant what if. This is real. It's already happening. China feared a future where the US might form a naval blockade, where one superpower might challenge another in a standoff. But instead, it got something far more dangerous: a fast, flexible global coalition with the Philippines at its center. And this coalition isn't just military. It's legal, it's digital, it's logistical, and it's strategic in ways no single country could ever be. Where China built artificial islands, the Philippines built real alliances. Where China used water cannons and lasers, the Philippines used cameras, treaties, and transparency and won the world's backing. Today, warships from Europe, jets from Japan, missiles from India, and Marines from Australia all work together on Philippine soil. This is the coalition China feared most. And it's not coming, it's already here. It's not slow, it's not clumsy, it's not dependent on one country. It's fast, it's global, it's ready. And it all started with one nation saying enough. So now the world watches. The Philippines has moved, its allies have answered, and the next move is China's. The Philippines didn't just survive the pressure, it transformed because of it. From being a quiet corner of Southeast Asia to becoming the most strategic military ally in the region. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened because of hard choices, because of clear vision, because one nation finally said enough. Enough watching fishermen get harassed, enough ships getting rammed, enough standing alone. So the Philippines flipped the script. Not with missiles or threats, but with truth, alliances, and relentless diplomacy. It began with transparency, showing the world what was really happening at sea. And the world responded. Now, every ship that docks, every satellite that shares intel, every war game and training mission proves one thing: the Philippines is no longer just a flashpoint. It's the heartbeat of a coalition. A living example that small nations can lead big changes. Behind every base access deal, missile system, radar upgrade, and shared command structure is one truth: the Philippines chose resistance over retreat, unity over silence, and that choice changed everything. So what happens next? Nobody knows for sure. Tensions are still high, China's still watching, the region remains a powder keg, but one thing is clear: if war comes, the Philippines won't face it alone. Not anymore. That reality alone could be the very thing that prevents war in the first place. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful weapon of all. But what if the stakes are even higher than you think? We've seen the military response, but we haven't talked about the real power play. This isn't just about sovereignty, it's a high-stakes economic battle for the world's shipping lanes. Think of the South China Sea not as a stretch of water, but as the world's most critical highway. Over 1/3 of global shipping passes through here every single year, carrying an estimated $5.3 trillion 0 cents in trade. And that's more than the entire GDP of Japan. It's the lifeline for global energy, for food, and for the supply chains that connect factories in Asia to shopping malls in America. For years, China's aggressive actions have been a direct threat to this vital artery. But what happens to the world's economy if this highway gets shut down? What happens to the price of gas, to the cost of your groceries, to the stability of entire nations? The countries sending warships to the Philippines aren't just defending a friend, they're defending the global economy. This is a game of economic deterrence. But here's the most surprising part: another set of alliances, ones you've likely heard of, are quietly connecting their systems directly to the Philippines. We've already covered how the US, Japan, Australia, and India have individually stepped up. But what if we told you there's a secret, a deep-level strategic integration happening that is quietly connecting all of these forces? This is the convergence of the AUKUS Pact: Australia, the UK, and the US, and the Quad. Australia, India, Japan, and the US. These two groups, once seen as separate initiatives, are now building a cohesive network of deterrence, with the Philippines as its central hub. Australia's commitment to acquiring nuclear-powered submarines isn't just about patrolling its own waters. It's about providing a long-range, stealthy presence in the region. And the technology and intelligence sharing between these nations are now being funneled directly into joint operations with the armed forces of the Philippines. Imagine a series of regional power generators, and the Philippines is the central grid that connects them all. A UK naval vessel can now share real-time sonar data with an Australian submarine, which is then passed to a Japanese naval commander, all to support a Filipino Coast Guard vessel in a patrol. This seamless integration is the next level of the coalition we're seeing, but the pressure is building on another front. As the coalition gets stronger, what's happening to the one country that's been trying to stay out of it, Taiwan? It's impossible to talk about the South China Sea without mentioning Taiwan. Just a narrow strait separates the Philippines from Taiwan. This small body of water, known as the Luzon Strait, is a critical choke point for any Chinese naval operation into the Pacific. For years, the world has focused on a potential China-Taiwan conflict as a single event, but the reality is far more complex and involves a much larger chess. The very bases the US is reactivating in the Philippines are perfectly positioned to provide a staging ground for a defense of Taiwan. They are the same bases that could be used to deploy missiles, launch jets, and conduct surveillance in the event of an invasion. But this raises a crucial question. Is the Philippines willing to risk its own security to support its neighbors? And how is this unprecedented military buildup, this flood of warships and weapons to the region, making a conflict less likely? And what about the other nations in Southeast Asia? Are they simply bystanders, or is the growing power of the Philippines forcing their hand? For decades, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, has operated on a principle of consensus. They tried to be neutral to avoid taking sides in the great power rivalry. But China's aggression in the South China Sea has shattered that fragile unity. While some nations, like Cambodia and Laos, remain diplomatically close to Beijing, others, like Vietnam and Malaysia, have their own territorial disputes and are growing increasingly concerned. In this divided landscape, the Philippines has emerged as an unlikely leader. By bravely confronting China and inviting a global military response, Manila has provided a model for others. The quiet support and shared intelligence that Vietnam receives from its allies, for example, is now being coordinated more openly thanks to the precedent set by the Philippines. It's a massive shift in regional diplomacy. Think of ASEAN as a family. For a long time, the family avoided talking about a bully at the dinner table. But now, one sibling has stood up to the bully and is showing the others how to get help. This has created a new dynamic, a silent but powerful alliance forming within the region itself, all centered around the new assertive stance of the Philippines. But while the ships and treaties make headlines, there's a hidden war being fought in the shadows, the battle for information and the next generation of warfare. Every time a Chinese Coast Guard ship harasses a Filipino boat, a video is uploaded. But that's just the public face of the battle. Behind the scenes, another war is being waged, a silent digital conflict for control of information. As nations are sending warships to the Philippines, they are also bringing a new level of intelligence and cyber capability. The US is sharing real-time satellite imagery, giving Filipino commanders a god's eye view of the entire South China Sea. Japan is providing advanced radar systems that can track ships in real time. But here's the twist. This isn't just about observing, it's about building a common operating picture, a unified digital nervous system for the entire coalition. This means that a French naval officer, a Filipino intelligence analyst, and a US Green Beret can all look at the same battlefield map with the same data at the same time. This level of interoperability is the backbone of modern warfare. But is all this new technology just for fighting a war, or is there a bigger, more peaceful mission behind it all? The world sees warships being sent to the Philippines and assumes a focus on conflict. But a crucial part of this military buildup is about something else entirely: humanitarian aid and disaster relief. As one of the world's most typhoon-prone nations, the Philippines has always relied on its armed forces for rescue operations. Now, with new assets from its allies, its ability to respond to natural disasters is more powerful than ever. New patrol ships from Japan and the US are being used to monitor illegal fishing, but they are also a crucial asset for search and rescue. The new bases being upgraded by the US aren't just for planes and missiles, they are pre-positioned with medical supplies, food, and emergency equipment. This dual-use strategy makes the entire coalition a force for good. It allows these countries to build trust with the Filipino people and solidify their alliances not just in times of conflict, but in times of peace. This is the ultimate lesson in soft power. You show up when things are bad and you build a bond that can never be broken. But what if all of this effort is just a prelude to a larger, more dangerous strategy? What if the next move isn't a naval blockade, but a total reset of the region's geography? China's strategy isn't just about naval aggression, it's about changing the very map of the South China Sea. They have built entire islands on top of reefs and shoals, turning tiny rocks into military bases. To the world, this is a flagrant violation of international law. To China, it's a matter of historical rights. In 2016, an international tribunal in The Hague ruled decisively in favor of the Philippines, declaring China's claims invalid. Beijing has ignored the ruling entirely. But this isn't the end of the story. The legal battle is heating up again, with new documents and evidence being compiled. The coalition is using the 2016 ruling as a legal and diplomatic shield, making it harder for China to justify its actions on the world stage. Think of it like a neighbor building a fence on your property. After a judge has already ruled the property is yours, the court order is your biggest weapon. It's not about force, it's about legitimacy. But how is the Philippines' own military modernization fitting into this global picture? Are they still relying solely on their allies, or are they quietly becoming a regional power in their own right? While the world has been sending warships to the Philippines, the country's own military has been undergoing an unprecedented transformation. For years, the armed forces of the Philippines was an internal security force focused on counterinsurgency. Today, that is changing. The Philippine Navy is acquiring new frigates and patrol vessels. The Air Force is modernizing its fleet with new fighter jets and surveillance aircraft. This isn't just about getting new toys. It's a fundamental shift in strategy from internal defense to territorial defense. The goal is to build a credible deterrent that can defend the country's sovereign waters and airspace. This is a crucial element of the entire coalition strategy. The US and its allies can't be there all the time. The Philippines needs to be able to stand on its own. It's like a friend helping you buy the best tools for a job, but ultimately you're the one who has to do the work, and the Philippines is doing the work. But as all this pressure builds, what is China's response? Are they backing down, or is their strategy just getting more sophisticated and dangerous? China isn't just reacting to this new coalition, it's adapting its strategy. They understand they can't win a conventional war against a coordinated global force, so they've doubled down on what analysts call gray zone tactics. This is warfare below the threshold of open conflict. It involves using civilian-looking fishing trawlers as maritime militia, deploying water cannons instead of guns, and ramming ships instead of sinking them. The goal is to harass, intimidate, and seize territory without triggering a formal military response from the allies. This is why the US and its partners are focused on building up the Philippine Coast Guard and sharing intelligence. The battle isn't just between navies. It's a constant day-to-day struggle to assert control. The gray zone is a kind of psychological warfare. It's designed to wear down the resolve of the Philippines and its allies. It's a long game of inches, and China believes that its patience will outlast everyone else's. But what if the gray zone has a major hidden weakness that the Philippines and its allies are about to expose? The world used to look at Chinese fishing boats and see fishermen. Thanks to the transparency campaign and advanced intelligence sharing, the world now sees something else: the People's Armed Forces Maritime Militia. These are not civilian boats, they are paramilitary vessels disguised as fishing trawlers, an unofficial extension of the Chinese Navy. The coalition is now using a combination of satellite imagery, drone surveillance, and intelligence analysis to unmask these vessels in real time. This information is being released to the public and to international maritime organizations. When a civilian boat starts acting like a military asset, it's no longer a gray zone operation, it's an act of state-sponsored aggression. By shining a spotlight on these tactics, the Philippines is forcing China to either back down or escalate to a level that would justify a full-scale response from the global coalition. It's a brilliant counter strategy, using transparency as a weapon. This is the battle for narrative, and for now, the Philippines is winning it. But there's one final crucial piece of this puzzle that brings this entire story together. It's the one thing that truly makes the Philippines so strategically important. Think about the geography. The Philippines isn't just an island nation, it's a gatekeeper. It is located at the absolute edge of the Pacific Ocean. Any Chinese ship or submarine wanting to break out of the South China Sea and into the vast expanse of the Pacific must pass through a narrow channel in the Philippine archipelago. This makes the country an immovable cork in China's maritime strategy. The strategic bases that the US and its allies are now using are all designed to fortify this gate. The new radar systems, the missiles, the jets, they are all placed to monitor and, if necessary, block any Chinese expansion into the open Pacific. China knows this. They understand that controlling the South China Sea is meaningless if they can't project power beyond it. This is why the Philippines is the central piece of this entire global puzzle. It's not just a pawn in a larger game. It is the board itself. But what happens if China decides to escalate? What if they don't attack the warships, but a single critical island? The final test of this entire coalition is happening not on a battlefield, but on a grounded, rusting warship in the middle of the sea. The BRP Sierra Madre is a derelict vessel intentionally grounded by the Philippines on 2nd Thomas Shoal, and it has become the ultimate symbol of sovereignty. Every month, a handful of Filipino Marines risk their lives to bring supplies to the outpost, facing Chinese water cannons and blockades. This is where the rubber meets the road. Every time China harasses the resupply mission, it forces the US and its allies to publicly reaffirm their commitment. The US has repeatedly stated that an armed attack on a Philippine vessel in the South China Sea would invoke their mutual defense treaty. This isn't just a threat, it's a promise, and it puts the entire coalition on a war footing. The 2nd Thomas Shoal is the final line in the sand, and it's a line that China has not yet dared to cross. But this brings us to the ultimate question, the biggest what if of all. What if this entire buildup isn't for a war at all, but to prevent one? The world has been fixated on the warships and the tension, on the possibility of a coming conflict. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the goal of sending warships to the Philippines isn't to prepare for war, but to make it unthinkable? The strength of this coalition lies in its overwhelming deterrence. China, for the first time in decades, is facing a coordinated, multinational, and technologically advanced force that is ready to respond to any aggression. They can't intimidate a single nation anymore. They are now facing a global response. The Philippines, by its courage and its clear vision, has become a global peace anchor. It has brought together nations from different continents and forced them to act as one. The combined military might of the US, Japan, Australia, India, and Europe, all working in a synchronized network from Philippine territory, has created a new reality in the Pacific. It's a reality where aggression has a price, and that price is the unity of the free world. It is the living proof that a small nation can change the course of history, not by fighting alone, but by having the courage to invite the world to stand with them. You came here to understand why everyone is sending warships to the Philippines. You now know the truth. The Philippines is no longer a pawn, it's the central piece of a global strategic realignment. It has used transparency, diplomacy, and courage to build an alliance so powerful that it may be the key to preventing the next great war. This knowledge empowers you to see beyond the headlines and understand the real forces shaping our world. This story is a testament to the fact that courage and clear vision can bring the world to your side. If this breakdown changed the way you think about military power, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel to join our community of thinkers.